Well, just talking me through how by not answering the question, by repeating processes which are not related to the question that I've asked.
What's mansplaining, Senator?
Well, it's the slightly patronising and condescending way that you're responding to my questions.
Well, I would suggest, Senator, that if you're putting the word man in front of some description of what I'm doing, you're doing that which I'm sure you're very much against, is making a sexist implication about how I'm conducting my role as a man.
Well, then the easiest way to do it...
Is that what you're saying, Senator?
Well, what I'm saying is that the way you've been responding to me has been patronising and condescending, and I have responded to that. So the easiest way to deal with this is not to have that way in responding to the questions I've asked.
Imagine the reaction, Senator, if I said you were woman-splaining. You're saying that I'm mansplaining.
Well, it is a term that's used.
Is it by whom?
Well, it is a term that's used.
By rude.
Doesn't make.
By rude senators. By senators who are seeking to make gender an issue. Stop being a hypocrite.
Well,
conduct yourself appropriately for this place.
I'm sorry you're so offended by the use of the word. It is a word that's used. I'm surprised that you're so shocked by the use of the word.
No, I'm just calling hypocrisy. Hypocrisy. Thy name is Labor. Thy name is Senator Gallagher.
All right. On another issue, what is the gender workplace hours gap? The agency reports a workplace gender pay gap comparing male full-time employees and female full-time employees, but male full-time employees work longer hours on average than female full-time employees. And the agency doesn't account for this when reporting a workplace gender pay gap.
Using ABS data on employee earnings and hours, the gender pay gap as at May 2016 was 15.7%. It is a survey of employees, that information from the ABS. It's not a census, and it's only conducted every 2 years. They only collect the data every 2 years. What we do is we annualise our figure to full-time. So we look at all part-time employees and full-time employees that may have worked part of a 12-month period, and we annualise that data to take into account part-time hours. So therefore we're converting the part-time hours to full-time, if you like.
So do you take into account the fact that on average a male full-time employee works longer hours than a female full-time employee?
Not directly, no.
You don't?
But we annualise the part-time hours and those that have worked full-time but for part of the year. So that way, because at the moment, what I can tell you is women work part-time at 3 times the rate of men. Mm. So by annualising it, we are looking at a more realistic...
So you base it on annual salary?
Yeah.
What about if you did it on an hourly rate? What would be the gender hourly pay gap?
Well, we don't have that data, Senator.
You don't have that data?
No, because we ask for annualised salaries from our employers when they report their data in.
Okay, so if a woman was working fewer hours but earning the same rate per hour as a man doing the same job, would that show up as a gender pay gap?
No.
But, well, then in that case you are looking at hourly rates.
Janine Buddha, Research and Analytics Executive Manager. So we do not collect the real hours that an employee might have worked. So what we do collect is the hours that are specified in a contract, and that is provided by organisations to us. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I mean, do you annualise it on the assumption that men and women are working the same number of hours, or is it actual earnings?
It's actual earnings, and we are unable to. We don't have the data to distinguish or to then adjust for hours, because we cannot collect the real hours that employees are working.
So it's not possible to tell whether any or some of the gender pay gap is just simply attributable to a different number of hours worked. Is that right?
It depends on whether we're looking at hours that are in contract or whether we're looking at hours that employees worked as, you know, overtime.
Why is it you don't look at hours worked? You don't collect it, but the ABS does. It's available.
The ABS does a survey, yes.
Every 2 years.
Yes.
And that's, but again, as I say, we collect census data, that is survey data. And the other thing I would say at this stage, Senator, is just because somebody might be sitting at their desk for 12 hours a day doesn't mean you're getting 12 hours of productivity out of them, and doesn't mean that they're working in essence any harder than someone that may sit at their desk for 8 hours. So I don't think
that's true, but they're getting paid for the 12 whether they're doing any work, or they're getting paid for however many hours they're sitting at their desk. And the issue for your agency is that if it's a male sitting at a desk, they're getting paid more than a female sitting at a desk. So the question is whether that, irrespective of the hours, the question is whether for those hours for which they're getting paid, is there a difference between men and women? So
we don't collect information on ours, Senator.
ABS does, so it's available. So if we put in a question on notice, will you access the ABS data and so you can answer that question?
Well, I did answer it earlier. I said that the ABS employee and earnings and hours data, as at May 2016, the gender pay gap was 15.7%.
That, if I understood you correctly, it's referring to annualised salary, is that right?
Not.
What's the gap based on? Per hourly rates or annual incomes or annualised incomes, or what are we talking about here?
Okay. The EEH data, so that's the employee earnings and hours data, includes all employees regardless of employment status and reflects ordinary time cash earnings. The EEH survey produces hourly earnings for non-managers and can be used to produce a gender pay gap measure inclusive or exclusive of part-time employees. The EEH data can also be configured in a variety of other ways that are useful to the gender pay gap estimates, e.g. managerial versus non-managerial employees. The big drawback from where we sit is that EEH data was identified as being, is just done on a 2-year cycle.
I don't think I can think of many men who would find it acceptable that a woman, irrespective of how many hours she's working in the day, if she's doing the same amount of work as a man, or the same job as a man, I'm sorry, was paid any less on the basis that she's a woman. I can't think of any men who would support that. And yet, because you're not looking at hours, we don't know whether that's occurring or not. Am I right there?
Senator, I think at this stage, as I've said to you, we are unable to collect and analyse that data. There are other countries, of course, that do that, and we will...
Not even every 2 years with the ABS survey data? You could do it at least every 2 years.
And I gave you the figure of 15.7% based on the calculation that we last did.
What's the 15.7 reflect?
So what I was about to say, Senator, is I'm happy to take that question on notice and go back and look at that last calculation that we did and provide.
Can women be funny?
Yeah, of course.
Some people have a hard time saying yes, though. There's a lot of angry young men on the internet that are like, women can't be fun.
Will you guys just fucking grow up and just sit down and write your own horse shit and come up with it? Start your own fucking show. Have your own award show. Quit waiting around for other people to do shit for you. That's the fucking problem. If you guys had your own big club and I was standing outside of it, you'd never fucking let me in. I'd start my own shit. You guys got to start your own shit. You got brains in there, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So write your own shit and quit your fucking whining. We're all eating a giant shit sandwich out here. Nobody cares. I don't care.
Absolutely, but I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a web person.
The fuck up. It makes no difference whether you got a dick or a twat. All right? Just do what the fuck you want to do, and hopefully people respond to it. But this fucking horseshit of quotas and all of this crap become undeniable. Well, when was the last time you went on stage and you killed so hard the person after you bombed? If you're fucking doing that on a regular basis, people are going to notice regardless of what you have between your legs. Yep. All right? Thank you, and God bless the United States of Canada.
Just another quick one about Angela's question on equality just before. We've got quite a large pay dispute happening with our Australian women's soccer team at the moment. Is it frustrating for you as someone who's so prominent in your sport, and we heard you say on the Ellen show the other day you are the richest fighter in UFC, that sort of thing is still going on?
I think that how much you get paid should have something to do with how much money you bring in. I'm the highest paid fighter, not because Dana and Lorenzo wanted to do something nice for the ladies. They do it because I bring in the highest numbers. They do it because I make them the most money. And I think that the money that they make should be proportionate to the money that they bring in.
Me. I'm trying to work that through in my head. Yeah, it took a while.
World Pioneer.
There it was. There I was thinking it was just me that had a problem, but it turns out it's the air conditioning that's sexist.
I know. So many women in our office have the exact same problem. You know, we just sit there absolutely freezing at our desks trying to type. You can probably tell I've got a cold right now, which I blame all on the AC. And so it's just so actually quite nice to see this research. It's just such a relief to know that there's actually proof that this is happening, that women, you know, do feel the cold more than men, and that the AC in offices is normally regulated more for a male's temperature than a woman's.
And it's an explanation for these constant battles you'll see in offices right across the country between the sexes for control of that office thermostat.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, you know, one of the biggest problems is that often in offices, it is men who control temperatures. You know, that's just something I've found anecdotally. And because majority of the men in offices seem to be absolutely fine with the temperatures, you know, women kind of just sit there on the corner feeling absolutely frozen. And, you know, often, like, actually nothing's being done to help them. And, you know, it might sound like a bit of a silly, light-hearted issue, but actually it's really uncomfortable being freezing at your desk every day. Take it from me.
No, I know I experience the same, because what I've often found is you go in on a really hot summer's day, you're wearing summer clothes, you go into an office and it's absolutely freezing. I think even for some men it must be too cold. I don't understand why air conditioning is often so cold. So what you have to do is then take a jumper in with you and put that jumper on in order to be able to function.
Yeah. Honestly, I think so many women listening now are going to just be nodding their heads thinking, yes, that is exactly my reality. You know, we joke at work that we actually can't dress fashionably anymore for summer because you actually just can't go in sandals. You can't go in a summer dress because you're going to have to put on the jumper or the emergency cardigan. So, yeah, it is quite frustrating, especially when you then go out on your lunch break or your commute home and you're absolutely boiling outside. And I think there is a bit of a problem when it's warmer outside than it is inside your office.
So what's the solution then? Because we can't have men overheating in the offices, can we?
No, I think we just need a bit more flexibility. You know, I think it is just essentially common sense. So if, you know, an office is noticing that a number of women are complaining about the cold, they need to be more flexible. You know, they need to actually kind of lower it and not just say, but, oh, the men are fine. You know, now there is actually proof that this is actually an issue. I think they need to kind of take women's considerations into account, and you know what, maybe there can be more flexibility with men not having to wear suits in some offices and they can come in T-shirts or whatever they need to be the right temperature.
One of the reasons your show is so successful is people love seeing a woman in control. And boy, is that a timely sentiment now. And yet you said you never considered yourself a feminist. Why is that? And do you get the same kind of pushback in saying that I do? Because I've said the same.
I get pushback. You have to listen to it. You're younger. I don't listen to it because I'm older. Because when I was growing up and going to school and being a lawyer and trying to become a judge and becoming a judge and then becoming a supervising judge, I didn't do it through any organization. And I think it takes away from your own self-worth if you say, I did it based on the work of a larger group. Now, it's nice to have it's like having a large family, you know, family being a safety net for you. It's nice to have a safety net. But if you don't have your own self-worth and forge forward yourself, that safety net, all it can do is give you the bottom. You have to push it through yourself. And I think that that's what makes me say, I'm really not a feminist, I'm an individualist. I think that individuals each have within themselves the capacity to be the hero of their own story. It doesn't always have to be a star of a television program to be the hero of your own story. You want to be a doctor, a lawyer, an Indian chief, whatever you want to be, you can be the best at it, be the most recognized in that profession or vocation. That makes you the hero of your story.
That's right. You can be a burger flipper and be the best darn burger flipper they've ever seen.
Be a great family person, be a great parent, be a great child, be a great citizen, be a great volunteer. That can make you a hero. That doesn't take a village. That takes an individual spirit. And I think everybody has it within themselves to do that.
What do you make of the Me Too movement?
I think it was necessary. Being a part-time person who lived in California, I can tell you one thing, Harvey Weinstein never put a hit on me. I'm speaking from a different perspective. As a young lawyer, I remember going into courtrooms and a couple of male judges saying, oh, you have great legs, and I don't, but you have great legs, that's a great looking suit. And what I said was, thank you. It didn't make me feel uncomfortable. Now it does. I think that the Me Too movement is an important place to jump off, and I don't think it should infect the workplace so that men and women can't interact naturally with each other anymore. Because I recall I do breaks at work where I have charity auction winners who come to the set. We day at the set, and we have lunch together for various charities. We do it once a week. And I was taking a picture with one of the men, and I put my hand on his shoulder. And he looked at me. We were sitting to take the picture. And I said, I would never have thought about that being inappropriate. But for now. So I think that the Me Too movement is an important movement, and I don't think it should be abused. So, that's it.
Yeah.
And specifically, the Romney campaign wants to talk about women and the economy. The women in this country still make 77 cents on the dollar for what men make. So if women don't make less than men?
Actually, if you start looking at the numbers, Rachel, there are lots of reasons for that.
Wait. Well, don't tell me the reasons are. Do women make less than men for doing the same work?
No, because...
Wow. Okay.
Well, for example, men work an average of 44 hours a week. Women work 41 hours a week. Men go into professions like engineering, science, and math that earn more. Women want more flexible professions.
Listen, this is not a math is hard
No. Yes, it is, actually.
No, it isn't.
Well, you have to
listen.
Look.
All right, let Rachel frame it, though, the way she
right now,
laid it out.
women are making 77 cents on the dollar for what men are making.
But that's not true. If so,
let Rachel make her point.
Every greedy businessman in America would hire only women, save 25%, and be hugely profitable.
I feel like this is actually, it's weird that you're interrupting me and not letting me make my point, because we get along so well, so let me make my point.
I will.
But it is important, I think, the interruption is important, I think, because now we know, at least from both of your perspective, that women are not faring worse than men in the economy, that women aren't getting paid less for equal work. I think that's a serious basis, a difference in factual understanding of the world. But Given that some of us believe that women are getting paid less than men for doing the same work, there is something called the Fair Pay Act. There was a court ruling that said the statute of limitations, if you're getting paid less than a man, if you're subject to discrimination, starts before you know that discrimination is happening, effectively cutting off your recourse to the courts. You didn't know you were being discriminated against, you can't go. The first law passed by this administration is the Fair Pay Act, to remedy that court ruling. The Mitt Romney campaign put you out as a surrogate to shore up people's feelings about this issue after they could not say whether or not Mitt Romney would have signed that bill. You're supposed to make us feel better about it. You voted against the Fair Pay Act. It's not about whether or not you have a female surrogate. It's about policy and whether or not you want to fix some of the structural discrimination that women really do face that Republicans don't believe is happening.
It's policy, is the argument.
It's policy, and I love how passionate you are. I wish you were as right about what you're saying as you are passionate about it. I really do.
That's
For
really
example,
condescending.
no.
I mean, this is a stylistic issue.
I'll tell you what.
My passion on this issue
Here's a fact.
is actually me making a factual argument on it. Alex?
May I share one fact with you? When you look at, for example, single women working in America today between the ages of, I think, 40 and 64, who makes more, men or women, on average? Men make $40,000 a year. Women make $47,000. When you take out the marriage factor, look at some economics. My point here is that we're manufacturing a political crisis to get away from what this election really wants to be about.
All right, well, let me bring...
And that's the Obama strategy in this election.
All right, but let's...
is that women are not being promoted, not being given the same opportunities, and as a result, we're all missing out. In Sky, for example, only a third of the top jobs are taken by women. That's now what this data tells us. Frankly, getting hung up on the hashtag rather than recognising what we're facing in this country, that doesn't sound like good economics to me, Kate.
I'm not hung up on any hashtag. I'm hung up on the fact that these new pay gap measurements are incredibly misleading and frankly useless. Only one of the 6 measurements has any real merit. None of them break down jobs, age, background, experience, time taken off work. You have not proven any kind of gender pay gap. What you have done is push many, many misleading statistics into the public domain, and it is absolutely an attempt to box women in to this victimhood mentality that when you actually break down the data, if you look at the official data from the Office for National Statistics, does not exist. There is a reason that this new data does not line up with the official data, and that is because it is so badly calculated. If you are an economist, it doesn't matter which side of the debate you're on, this is just bad data.
No, Kate, you've just misquoted the Office of National Statistics. Kate, you've just misquoted the Office of National Statistics, which own studies show that indeed the gender pay gap amongst young women graduates and male graduates is growing. So actually, equal pay and gender pay in this country
Stella,
is
that
stagnating.
is some ugly
but let's look at the data that we have in front of us. Well, we can ask the Office for National Statistics to confirm that, but that's what their data shows. You've asked about the data that the government is publishing.
-5.1.
One at a time. You have to just go one at a time.
Sorry.
Stella, you go ahead.
Look, okay, Kate, you want to talk about the data that's been published. I think a lot of women right now who are looking at data that shows that the bonuses that men in their company are getting are sometimes 50% more than them would disagree with you that that isn't meaningful information to know. I think a lot of women in companies and indeed in our public sector, for example, in the NHS where we're seeing a pay differential, despite the majority of the workforce being female, would find it insulting that you think that that is an interesting thing that we need to discuss. We need to understand why that is happening. This data is the first step. The next step is to ask companies what they're doing about it. That's exactly what this research helps us to do. And for you to say that this data is misleading or unimportant, well, I have listened to you, Kate, and I have listened to you insult the Office of National Statistics on their own research. So I think at the very least, you look at the data we're talking about today.
Stella, at the end of the day...
I disagree, and I think the numbers of women... It's actually about helping everyone, Kate, because the gender pay gap doesn't help anyone. What it also tells us is that still too often the idea about flexible work is something that women have to deal with rather than parents, for example. And what we're looking at for these companies, thankfully most of them take a very different view to you. They recognise it's a problem. If they're not tapping into the pool of talent they have in their companies because of the gender, they know they're missing out. What this data is doing is driving that conversation. What this campaign is doing is helping women and men be part of it.
Stella, the truth of the matter is that when you actually examine the measurements of this, you need so much more data in order to render anything meaningful from them. If you look at the bonuses that you just mentioned, it is impossible to know if men and women are being paid unfairly via bonuses unless you know what their actual salaries are. So you can know the percentage of their salary that's going towards a bonus, and so you actually have some meaningful data. don't, Stella. The crude numbers that the government has mandated that companies report does not dive into any of this, and that makes it extremely misleading. Companies like EasyJet and Phase 8 are always going to have a wide gender pay gap, not because of discrimination, but because they do mass hiring of women into their primary and the majority of their roles, which happen to be in things like retail and cabin crew. Your government figures do not highlight that in any capacity, and now you have launched a campaign that directly tries to conflate the gender pay gap with equal pay. And if I may just finish, because I think you have had your time to speak, what this real attempt is here is to hit the reset button on equal pay. Women have been doing so well, and the stats prove it when you actually break down the data like for like, that the victimhood groups need to hit the reset button in order to keep their membership going. It works in elections, it works for things like the Equal Pay Day campaign, but women out there need to know just how misleading this data is, and I don't think your hashtag or your attempt to make companies report these misleading figures is helping them.